When you first met Jack, it looked like he was a sheriff in an old Western movie.
He was an artist and a writer and a performer and a gentleman.
And all of her grandchildren called her Momo.
She was really a gorgeous babe.
Daughters and mothers, they always have their history of battles.
I sort of knew that he was interested in me, and I needed some work done on my apartment.
And I was like, are you insane?
Of course I said yes.
Some people felt, why are we airing this out in the public?
I don't know if Grandma's been kidnapped or if she's died.
She would do weird things.
I couldn't believe that she took it to that level.
The death of Aaron changed me so much.
You're gonna be seen as the head of this family now.
I do feel like I've had two soulmates.
My name's Donald.
My name is Nicole.
Basil.
Gyda.
My name is Matt.
And I'm one of the lucky ones.